Chapter 19. The Queen's Gambit. The air in the Rockford conference room was thick with tension, so palpable it felt as though it might snap at any moment. I sat in the middle of the long mahogany table, my heart pounding, keeping my expression calm, though inside I was anything but. On one side, Carter leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on Adrian across the room. They exchanged daggered looks, each one silently daring the other to make a move, each one bristling with the knowledge that only one could win. Adrian sat stiff, his hands steepled in front of him, his gaze hard and unyielding. His presence radiated controlled anger, the kind that made the air around him seem electric. I could feel it. The storm that was about to break between them, one way or another. They both thought they were in control, both thought they had me, and this deal, exactly where they wanted. But they were wrong. The silence stretched, uncomfortable, as we waited for the final player to enter the room. Then, finally, the door creaked open, and every head turned toward it. In walked Margrett Clark. Her presence alone made the room shift. She was the kind of woman who didn't need to speak to command authority. Her posture, her gaze, everything about her exuded power. Margrett Clark wasn't just any executive. She was the driving force behind Rockford Industries, the linchpin that held it all together. And if anyone in this room had the final say, it was her. "Good afternoon," she said, her voice even but sharp, cutting through the tension like a blade. She didn't wait for a response as she strode to the head of the table, taking her place as if the entire room belonged to her. In some ways, it did. Adrian and Carter shifted in their seats, their eyes following her every movement. I remained still, my heart racing, but my mind focused. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, the moment everything would come together or fall apart. Margaret sat down, folding her hands on the table, her gaze sweeping across the room. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she let the silence settle in, as if testing each of us, measuring our reactions. Her eyes flicked over Adrian, then Carter, and finally landed on me. I met her gaze without flinching. "So," she began, her voice smooth but with an edge, "we're here to discuss the merger. I've reviewed both proposals, Adrian's and Carter's." She paused, her eyes narrowing slightly. "I'll admit, they are both compelling. The numbers, the potential for growth, it's all there. On paper, either deal could be beneficial for Rockford." The tension in the room grew thicker as she spoke, each word laden with implication. I could feel Adrian and Carter's gazes burn into me, both of them waiting for her to say the one thing that could tilt the balance in their favor. But I kept my face neutral, unreadable. Margaret continued, her eyes still scanning the room like a predator assessing its prey. "But I have some concerns." Adrian leaned forward slightly, his voice calm but forceful. "Concerns, Miss Clark?" "Juliet has been working closely with both Jackson and me on these proposals." Margaret turned her sharp gaze on him, and for the first time, I saw him falter, just slightly. "Yes, concerns," she said smoothly. "Mergers of this magnitude require more than just numbers and projections. They require trust, vision. And frankly, I'm not convinced either of you," her gaze flicked to Carter now, "understands what that truly means for Rockford." Carter sat up straighter, a forced smile on his face. "With all due respect, Margaret, I think we've more than proven our ability to bring Rockford into new market. Our partnership with Juliet—" "Juliet," Margaret interrupted, her eyes locking onto mine, "is exactly why I'm here today." Adrian stiffened in his seat, his gaze shifting to me. "We're aligned in what we want for Rockford's future." Carter nodded, his expression eager. "Juliet and I have been discussing this merger for months. We're on the same page." Margaret's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. Cold, calculating. "Is that so?" There was something in her tone, a dangerous edge that sent a ripple of unease through the room. Adrian and Carter exchanged uneasy glances, both sensing that something was off. Margaret leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms as she looked between the two of them. "I'm afraid you've both been misled." The silence that followed was suffocating. Carter's smile faltered, and Adrian's gaze hardened. "What are you talking about?" Adrian demanded, his voice tight with suspicion. Margaret's eyes gleamed as she glanced at me, and I felt the weight of the moment settle over me like a heavy cloak. She was handing the floor to me. The time had come. I sat up straighter, meeting both Adrian's and Carter's bewildered gazes. "You both think you've been working with me," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm brewing in the room. "But the truth is, I've been playing both of you." Adrian's eyes widened, and Carter's mouth fell open in disbelief. "What?" Carter sputtered. "You're joking." "No," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I'm not. I've been gathering information, positioning myself, making sure that when the time came, I'd be the one in control. Neither of you are getting this merger. Rockford will never be yours." Adrian's face darkened, his jaw clenching. "You're playing a dangerous game, Juliet." "And I'm winning," I shot back, my eyes cold. "You both thought you could use me, manipulate me into giving you control over my father's company. But I've been the one pulling the strings. This merger, it was never about you." Carter stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You can't do this. We had a deal." Margaret raised a hand, silencing him with a single gesture. "Enough," she said, her voice low but commanding. "Juliet is right. You've both been outplayed." Adrian's expression was unreadable now. His eyes locked on me with a mixture of fury and something else. Something darker, more dangerous. "You both came in here thinking you could dominate this deal," Margaret continued, her gaze shifting back to Adrian and Carter. "But Rockford will never work with either of you. The only person we're willing to work with is Juliet. If you want to do business with Rockford, you'll go through her." The room fell into stunned silence. Carter's face had turned ashen, and Adrian's fists clenched at his sides, barely containing his rage. Margaret rose from her chair, smoothing her jacket with deliberate calm. "I suggest you both think carefully about your next moves," she said, her voice icy. "Because from now on, Juliet is in charge." She glanced at me, a small nod of acknowledgement, before turning and walking out of the room. I stood, following her without hesitation, the weight of my triumph settling over me. As the door clicked shut behind us, I didn't look back. Inside, I knew Adrian and Carter were sitting in stunned silence, both of them reeling from the revelation that I had outmaneuvered them both. They had never seen it coming. And now, the game was mine to play.